if we were going to evolve our processes. There's the saying that if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you'll always get. That's not relevant in COVID. If you do what you've always done, you'll go backwards. So what we had to do was look at getting people involved from around the business as well as externally, rather than just relying on our directors and our executives to make decisions. We had to move fast, and we had to make decisions that were all about the safety of our customers as well as our employees. So we did that by immediately setting up working groups, throwing red tape out of the window and saying what feels right and what's going to keep people safe. We looked at who needs us, which customers are going to need us the most during this time. How do we help them? Our vulnerable customers who we may previously have had to go to their home because, they smell gas. We turn up, they've got some ancient cooker, which is, belching out CO. Historically, we had to turn them off, say, you need to replace this and get your own gas safe in, and off we would go. But that wasn't good enough for us during the pandemic. We wanted everybody safe. So we were paying out of our own pocket for gas safe engineers to come out. We were replacing appliances. We were working very closely with resilience partners, with charities like Scope, to ensure that these people were looked after. And we put the safety of our people.
How did that work? Working with Deborah, working with someone like Scope, just tell us a bit more about why that was necessary.
Because the biggest impact we have on people is our vulnerable customers. So people for whom their hot water and heating their homes is not just a luxury, it's essential for their life. So working with Scope, a big disability charity, meant that we were able to understand what people needed. As an able-bodied person, I could say, oh, well, I think people are fine because I'll be fine. But no, we needed to involve the people who actually knew, the people who were going to be impacted by this, and say, what do you need? They told us, so we delivered, and we delivered fast, that day. Not, okay, well, I'll put in a request. It was, no, you want this, I'll get it done. Where's someone's credit card? Okay, give it to me, I'll pay for it. That was how we were responding. We came at it.
You're telling me, you mean you actually paid for your stuff out of your own pocket on behalf of the company? Or you paid for customers?
Yeah, we pay for customers. So we pay customers to have new appliances, to get gas safe engineers to come out to perform checks that we weren't able to do because we weren't qualified to do so, to reconnect people to supply, and during a terrifying time, made sure that at least they were warm and they were able to eat. We got them involved with charities that could feed them if we identified that they were in poverty. We do see that because, as I mentioned before, we are actually going into people's homes. So we were able to send them, the Morrison's food boxes. We got them involved with different charities. There's so much that we did because we came at it as, we're people, let's do this as people, not as a process as a company.
What proportion of your customer base would that be?
Vulnerable. So we have something called the Priority Service Register, and if anybody is vulnerable, I highly recommend signing up to it. You can sign up through your energy supplier or via our website or your DNO's website or GDN's website. So we have a list. So we reckon probably about 20% of our customers are probably vulnerable, but that number is a very conservative estimate because there's so many people who aren't known to their energy companies that we then discover and we refer them on. So we're discovering new people all the time.
Yeah, and how many customers do you have, and how many employees do you have at SGN?
Well, we have about 5.9 million customers across the south of Scotland, so a great deal, and about 20,000 employees.
Right. So of that 5.9 million, about 1 million or so are classed as vulnerable. So you're trying to deal with 1 million potentially calls where you have to provide a lot of intensive support.
Absolutely. I mean, it varies. We have people who would be considered vulnerable because they're over 65. However, my parents took great offence to that when I mentioned that they were considered vulnerable. Yeah. So that's it's all about the individual, understanding what their circumstances are and what's the best thing to do for them.
Do you have any idea of the sort of call volumes you're handling perhaps during April, May?
Do you know what? Our call volumes are actually quite low during April. Because all work stopped, so we weren't able to, go ahead and dig up the roads or carry on work. So the mainly it was just emergency calls and the odd query that we were getting from customers. But I'm just quickly looking now. So actually the calls were about 16,000 in April and May, whereas if we look at the quarter just gone now, January to we're nearly at the end of March, we are up to about 38,000.
Right.
So it was a very small percentage. But what did increase massively was our live chat and our emails. Our emails went up about 40% last year. So more people were going towards the technology route than the phone route.
How did you manage to sort of prioritize? I mean, you've got all these new requirements, people, the vulnerable people, new requirements coming at you from everywhere. Process is not mapped, customer journeys are maybe not mapped like this before. I don't know. How did you manage to sort of prioritize?
Well, we have something called needs codes, which help us. And when you register to be on the priority service register, there are certain codes that are assigned to you based on what your vulnerability is, from that you've got a young child right up to the fact that you might have, an end of life situation. That helped. But also just everybody in the business got involved. So it wasn't just the call center, taking the call, but we did still answer 80% of our calls in 30 seconds whilst working from home during a pandemic.
Yeah, okay.
Impressive. And that's right up until today, 80%, even with our increased volumes and live chats and emails. But it was just everybody pulling together around the business and going, right, what can I do about this particular person? I'm really worried about this guy. Do you know anybody? Is there anything we can do? Working with our contractors, we have a lot of contractors as well, getting them involved, because we're living through a time that isn't just about money and revenue. We're living through a time where us turning off someone's supply could actually be life or death situation. So everything that we could do to ensure that that customer was safe and secure and comfortable, we did. We formed great partnerships with people, and that was absolutely the key to our success, was working together.
I mean, you have these. Thank you, Deborah. Do you have the contractors? I mean, presumably, the people that dig up the roads. Do you have a fleet of vans as well? People visiting houses? Yeah. So
we have emergency engineers. So in order for us to do anything to your gas supply, we have to be at your house, because
you still read meters. You still read meters.
That's not us. That's your energy supplier.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
But they're reading external meters.
So do you have a fleet of people in vans traveling around the country? What was work like for them? How did that change?
Actually they got really, they've always been seen as the heroes, because the emergency guys, they turn up because you smell gas. So they're the white knights coming in to save the day. But the response was just even better, because throughout COVID, we went to a real length to ensure that everybody was safe. The first thing we did was reevaluate our safety procedures. Is our guy going to be safe going into that customer's house? Is that customer going to be safe with our guy going? What can we do? So we ensured that we had all of the right safety gear, processes, and that we told our customers in advance, this is what's going to happen. This is what we need to do. There was no ambiguity at all. And actually, sorry.
In some sectors, we were told the government forbade people, or the company told the government they have forbidden us from providing you with the service. I take it that. Yeah. Was that the case?
Partly to us. So not for emergencies, because an emergency is an emergency, and you can't go, sorry, you've got a gas leak, but the government says no. We've still got to go in and fix that, because otherwise the house could blow up. We wouldn't want that. It's a risk of life. Our basics of our company is safeguarding life and property, but our other side of the business, so our mains replacement, that stopped. As well as our connections. So if you build a house or you want to build an extension, you ring us so that we can move your gas.
You couldn't connect up extensions. You couldn't connect up housing estates. Yeah.
Nope. No, and that actually was something that upset customers quite a lot, because they had spent an awful lot of money at this stage, and then the government went no, and they wanted to be first in line when we started back up again.
Unprecedented times. So I think you probably learned a huge amount about your customers, new things about. Do you think you forged new relationships? I mean, that's a lot of customers. I don't know if it's possible to make such a generalization. Did you have any way of evaluating the impact of all this on the customers, on your, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we're a regulated business. So one of the ways that our regulator checks, that we're doing what we say we're doing, is we have a survey that the customers are sent after the work's completed. They give us a score, and that score we're actually rewarded or penalised on. So our score, we're number one at the moment, and our score, especially in emergency and repair, just rocketed straight up. It went really, really high because customers were so impressed and felt so reassured. And we also carried out focus groups, via Teams.
Yeah.
It's the best focus groups we've ever done. It's incredible, and anyone who here is watching who does focus groups, do it via Teams. It's brilliant. You get fantastic feedback, fantastic videos that you can then share, better than the traditional room with a sort of camera in the corner. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But we got brilliant feedback, and we also carried out, this is one of the things that we did from a stakeholder and involving the customer thing. Before we restarted our mains replacement work, we were very nervous. We didn't want to do anything that would upset customers in any way or cause any concerns. We carried out something called a sentiment survey. So we went round to every single house that we were intending to do work on within the next few months. We knocked on the door, stood 2 meters away, and then had a conversation with them. This is what we propose to do. We will need to come into your home in order to turn a supply off, carry out the change, and then reconnect. Are you okay with that? Do you have any questions? What can we do to make you feel better about this? Is there something we're missing? And that's simple. We've done bits and bobs like that before, but never on that scale.
Yeah.
But
how many of those sentiment surveys did you do?
Thousands and thousands in Scotland and South. We did absolutely thousands of them, because none of the engineers were working at that time, in mains replacement. So they were like, go and knock on the door.
Completely new exercise. Never done anything like that before.
Never done anything like that. We did obviously stakeholder before we started a project anyway, but it was knocking on a few doors. This was absolutely everyone. We spoke to shielding customers. We spoke to customers that were frightened. But the response universally, 98% of our customers were absolutely fine afterwards with us coming in and doing the work. And the ones that weren't, we just said, okay, fine, we'll wait. And customers were just so happy. And our customer scores went from about 8.7 up to 9.03 out of 10, which we'd never been anywhere near that before. And we are number one by a long way now.
Brilliant. That's great tale. I mean, there really is the opportunity probably still to pull out all the stops and change on a massive scale. So I've got a couple more questions for you before we open up for other questions, but what have you learned most about the employee experience?
That you need to involve people. If people are involved in things, in the first instance, you get, he's gone. All right, okay. In the first instance, you get absolutely brilliant feedback, because you're talking to people who do the job day in, day out, but also you get much more buy-in from people at a time that they're scared as well. So involving people, what do we do? Come work with us. Don't just put on orders or bring down orders from up high. It made all the difference. So our employee engagement, we've just done a recent employee engagement survey within our company, and people largely are feeling very safe, very reassured, and that they're being listened to. And that's been key across customers, across employees, that it's just made a huge difference to us.
Very good. Very interesting. So I'm going to come back to that in a second, because we've got some questions in the chat coming. But I think the last question I want to ask you before we open up is, which changes do you think to CX, the customer experience landscape, if there is such a thing, do you think will remain after the pandemic?
Technology. Absolutely. We have seen a huge surge in technology usage. As I said, email, live chat, etc. has gone up. We introduced two-way SMS during this process as well. That absolutely took off. And going back to when I mentioned the focus groups, doing it by teams, most of the customers that came on were over 70. And I think previously we would have said they're not going to know how to use Teams, and being not dismissive, but not perhaps realizing just how much technology has been embraced. COVID has caused people to rely on Teams, Zoom, FaceTime in order to interact with their families and have quiz nights and game nights and actually feel connected during this thing. So people who before would have been like, oh no, I don't like technology, my mother-in-law hates technology, now can't get her off FaceTime, she absolutely loves it, Snapchat, etc. She's always sending me pictures. So the technology is absolutely key. That is going to remain. People's expectation of what information you give them is also heightened. We've gone from people casually watching the news as they would do to there's a new announcement, the government is telling us something, people watching and people wanting answers to everything. So we can't get away with vague statements anymore of, we'll be here and we're probably doing this. You need to be clear and concise with the information you give people, because expectations are higher. And I'd say they're the main things that you need to be mindful of for the new landscape. Get your technology right and your information really, really clear. That's what the customers want.
Super. Thank you, Deborah. Are you going to stick with remote working?
I think we are. We're in the process of engaging with our employees about what they want going forward, right, and how they want it to be. Largely, people are looking for a couple of days in the office and a couple of days at home, because people are missing the social side of things, the water cooler chats, etc. So I think we definitely will be looking at, because we have proven that home working works. No targets have been failed. Nothing has gone wrong with home working. So I think this is definitely the future, and it's a comfortable future, and it works really well for everybody. I'm a mother of a young child. Worked really well for me. Worked well for a lot of people. I can't think of anyone who has not had a benefit to some home working.
There is the issue of not being able to switch off. I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, you're a sort of fairly senior person and you take responsibility of your job very seriously, but you have to switch off, don't you? You have to consciously make an effort to just switch off. I mean, you could just roll out of bed, straight up to your computer, till 11 o'clock at night and then roll back into bed almost. So got a couple of questions coming in, Deborah. One of them is actually from Naeem himself asking. So he said, asking for customer feedback is very brave. Because we can open ourselves up for criticism. Was there any resistance to that? I think that Naeem means within the organization, perhaps at that during this time, maybe you shouldn't ask.
No, there wasn't any resistance. I mean, firstly, as I mentioned, we're a regulated business, so we've been doing the customer satisfaction survey for 8 years. And that wasn't stopping throughout COVID. So we're already very used to asking for feedback. But also, if you don't ask for feedback, then you have no idea. And let's be honest, we all went into COVID with no experience of handling a pandemic. So everything we did was very much based on what we thought was the right thing to do. So if you're not asking people, are you doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? How do you know? You could be upsetting people even more than you realize. And they say that, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And it's true. You need to ask. You will get criticism and you will learn from that criticism. And that's the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Super answer. Thank you, Deborah. I mean, they've got another question here was, what did you learn? Is there anything in particular that you learned from doing these surveys? This is Farhan. And is there anything that you're doing specifically now, looking forward to coming out of this, which you've learned from the data and you're gonna take action on?
Communication, no doubt.
Right.
So I would say that was probably when we first went into the pandemic, not our best area. So we were doing everything that we thought was right. We were stopping work, we were helping all the vulnerable customers we came across. We had these internal working groups, but in terms of communications, we were still slightly vague, vague updates on the website, not giving anyone any clear targets or timelines, not, obviously within reason when you could, or actually explaining the reasons behind things. And that didn't shoot us in the foot, but it did not get responded to as well as we thought, because that's what we'd always done. We do tend to get picked on by the local press because we've dug up a road and there's so traffic lights, so we've always been a little bit gun shy with that type of thing. But actually it showed us we've just got to be a lot more open with people, because if people know what's going on, they are most of the time quite happy. It might not be the news they want, and it might not be the answer they want, but they're informed. And if you inform people, you empower people. Whereas if you try and keep stuff from them, then they get upset, understandably.
Yeah, okay, so just give us a final little thing about your own responsibilities then within SGN. How many people are you responsible for? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
So I look after primarily the customer satisfaction survey that I've just mentioned, and the training for all of our engineers and departments in the south. So I've got customer experience officers that work for me. Historically, they used to go out to the depots and do training. We've got 8 depots in the south and 6 up in Scotland. Although they're not doing that anymore, we are doing virtual training, and that has changed our lives.
Yes.
Whereas before, going in and training all these thousands of engineers would have taken months and months and months. Trying to get a room, everybody remembers the pain of trying to get a room somewhere. No, now we just need to say training tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Who wants to join? Oh, okay, fine. And you could have hundreds of people on this training, and we just had to come up with new ways to gauge the compliance, and that the people were understanding, and that their confidence levels afterwards. But it worked. So yeah, I look after the CSAT, as we call it, customer satisfaction survey for the south, all the training, as well as just supporting with all things customer.
Right. I mean, that's a wonderful example. I mean, you're not going to go back to classroom training, are you? Or is it?
There is no need, and there hasn't been any need. It has worked, and SGN, like most companies, had a bit of an old-fashioned mentality. All home working is only a treat occasionally, and it takes 6 months to get any process change through, and everyone's got to have their say. And this has just thrown all of that out the window. It's got rid of a lot of red tape. It's shown that, people can make decisions and do the right thing without every single person in the company having to chew it over and then disagree because they don't like each other. It's actually worked out really, really well.
I've seen some of the techniques people like Ian and trainers have been using online. And I think in some ways, it's more effective than classroom training, because you just assume everybody's listening, whereas on Zoom or on whatever, you can actually check, you can actually see everybody's results, and can be quite interactive in that way. So yeah, I think that's another area where there's been a great impact. I mean, Deborah, wonderful story, obviously, quite not a particularly sexy industry, if I could say that, but right on the front line. And we really do depend on our gas supply. And during this sort of time, an emergency service, you provide an emergency service, certainly parts of it, and amazing the work that you've done. So do you have a new entry for the Customer Experience Awards this year?
We will. They're being worked on at the moment, and you'll be seeing us.
Okay, well, super. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for the questions. I just wanted to remind everybody at the end of the presentation here that the UK Customer Experience Awards is open right now. And the entry submission date is the 25th of June. And the awards finals will take place live online on the 7th of October. But here's the news. On the 14th of October, which is a week later, we hope to be live in Wembley Stadium. And we're going to party like it's 2021 post-COVID, I think. Okay, so super. Thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you, everybody. I think that's back to you, Naeem, and thanks for your help at the start there, Naeem. Okay.
Thank you, Deborah. Really enjoyed that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Neil, let's get ready for our next speaker. We'll be up in about 2 minutes. Turn the rockstar music off there. Hello, David. David, can you hear me?
Very faintly. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. My batteries are not very good in my microphone. So I'm going to hand over to you, sir. You're going to run our next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So basically, today we are here with Matthew Rawlings, who's digital capability lead for NatWest Group. We're here to discuss their initiative related to Ella, which is their everyday learning assistant who earned them their accolade as Team of the Year for the UK Customer Experience Awards last year. So we can start with some introductions. Do you want to tell us a bit about the initiative, Matt?
Yeah, no problem. And thank you, David, and thanks for the opportunity to come along today. So Ella, and you'll probably hear me refer to her as she, as we continue our conversations because she is part of the team, was something that we introduced probably in the region of about 2 years ago to really help support our colleagues. So Ella is a chatbot. She's designed to support our internal colleagues to have great conversations with our customers, providing information that they need as and when they need it, and in a simple, clear, and really easy way to access that information. In terms of how she's kind of grown over the last year or so, she's grown pretty big to the stage where last year she answered in the region of around 50 million questions for our colleagues throughout various different environments. Now, clearly, I know we'll talk about how she's changed over the last 12 months and what difference Ella's made. But it is very much designed to have those great conversations. Clearly, as an organization, we can't expect our colleagues to know everything. There's just too much. So if we can't expect them to know everything, what is it we can do to help them to find the information they need when they need it? Hence Ella.
So what was the actual pain point that you were trying to resolve? I mean, how did the conversation start about introducing something or someone like Ella?
Yeah, we started off, like most organizations, we had a repository of knowledge, whether that was knowledge bases, intranet type content, SharePoints, a raft of different bits of information readily available for our colleagues to try and find. I know when I joined the bank, which was a long time ago, we used to have business support manuals, which were paper, all in files, and you had to go and find the right file to find out what you needed. So things have moved on massively since then. I guess the pain point we had at the very beginning was, how do we actually provide that information quickly and easily, and in a way that's really easy to understand, and in a way that's in a language that our customers, importantly, would understand, to be able to share that content with them.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I would like to point out that Ella was introduced before COVID struck.
Yep.
So there was an initiative that started completely independently from having to work remotely. How has it evolved due to COVID? How has it changed, or has it changed because of COVID?
To be fair, I think for me, she hasn't changed a lot. To be fair, her importance has changed even more so. Because if you think now, and I think Deborah was talking about colleagues working from home, working in very different environments. So if you think about in a traditional branch environment, if you had a question, you could perhaps give your colleague next to you a little nudge and ask them if they knew the answer, or you pop to the interview room next door, or go and see your boss in some shape or form. Clearly, working from home, you don't have that. Invariably, you've got your kids running around homeschooling, and you've got your dog barking at the postman in some shape or form. But what you haven't got is your colleague sat next to you. to be able to ask those questions. So what Ella became over the last 12 months is very much that colleague, that person that you could just ask a question to and get the answer that you needed to be able to have a great conversation with a customer.
So how has usage changed? I mean, do colleagues use it more? Do more colleagues use it? Is it changed the way they approach it?
We've seen over the last 12 months during the pandemic, some of the metrics we measure. So we measure engagements, which are the number of colleagues actually using Ella, and then we use another measure around interactions. So how many interactions are our colleagues actually having with Ella? What we saw in the early part of the pandemic was clearly the level of engagement reduce. But what that correlated to was actually the level of colleagues actually working. We have, a number of colleagues were isolating, shielding. In some cases, were actually poorly with COVID-19. So we had a reduction in the number of colleagues actually in the business. But during that initial period, albeit the level of engagement, so the colleagues actually using Ella reduced, the number of questions being asked of Ella increased twofold. So we actually saw a load more questions being asked of Ella. Again, kind of what we expected, because you can't ask somebody sat next to you. So you needed to ask the question of somebody, and Ella became that somebody. So we saw engagements reduce, interactions increase. As time has progressed and we've perhaps settled down a little bit now with different ways of working and our colleagues coming back to the business, as we've progressed through the pandemic as a country. And what we've actually now seen is the number of engagements are now higher than what they were before the pandemic started. So we're now seeing more people use Ella than we're using Ella before. But actually the number of interactions through Ella has probably remained constant. What we kind of put that down to is a number of different things. So we worked really hard as a team, a very small team, to look at how we actually become very succinct with how we surface information for our colleagues. So one of our challenges over the last 12 months is actually to reduce the number of interactions with Ella. Because actually what we want to do is help colleagues find the information really quickly. So we don't want colleagues having to ask 2 questions or 3 questions to get to the answer of 1 question. So we worked really hard in the background and got much better as a team in terms of how we provide that information. Ella herself is doing a lot of work for us through machine learning. So she's being quite smart in terms of how she supports us with surfacing information for our colleagues as well. So the fact we've not seen an increase in interactions is something that we're quite pleased with. Because for me, it means actually we're doing our job right and we're getting the information to our colleagues quickly. And one thing, David, we're really proud of is actually at the moment we're running with a success rate of 98.2%, which basically means from when colleagues look for the answer to one of their questions, 98.2% of the time they're finding it. That said, great result. With the size of the numbers that we have, actually that 1.8% is still a big number. So our team and my team focuses very much on that 1.8%. We don't focus on the 98.2. We focus on the 1.8 to understand, okay, so what is it we're not answering? What is it we need to do? Is it fixes around search? Is it generally the content just isn't there? Is it how it's being asked for? We look after colleagues in the UK, we look after colleagues in India, etc., and around different parts of the globe. So, people have different ways of asking for information. So how do we make it work for all?
But, I think the matter with machine learning is that it kind of evolves by itself. That's the very nature of it. So good. Could it be just a matter of waiting and for Ella to become like more skilled in understanding like human interaction?
You could if you wanted to, I guess. As to how long we would take to get there, I don't know. But so to have that human side of it, I think is equally as important as the machine learning side of things. So actually within the back end of Ella herself, the level of data, and I'll confess that there is so much data. It's kind of how do you sift your way through the minefield that is of the data that's available to ensure that we're focusing on the right bits. So whatever we can do as humans to expedite Ella's learning and to improve that better proposition for our colleagues, which is our purpose and why we exist, then that's something we need to do. I think it'd be wrong of us just to sit and wait for Ella to figure it out by herself. She does a pretty cool job of figuring stuff out, but if we can help her along the way, then that's the right thing for us to do.
So, I mean, how do you think she's going to evolve, like over the next period of time, especially considering that we are supposed to coming out of lockdown at some point soon?
Yeah.
Do you think she will change? Do you think she will stay the same and become more relevant, less relevant? How do you see her role become in the next few years?
I think her role will continue to be hugely relevant, and probably, if I'm honest, more relevant in terms of how we do things. Because I think listening to Deborah talk around some of the initiatives and how they were working with colleagues continuing to work from home, that will be the case. We've got colleagues now looking after customers via video rather than face-to-face interactions. The feedback is fantastic. So we will continue to need to provide that ability for that just-in-time knowledge, learning for all of our colleagues. When we go back to the colleagues being based in a branch, and to be fair, we've been open throughout as an organisation. Our branches have been open throughout, different hours, different ways of working, social distancing, very challenging throughout. We have still had colleagues in branches. So the ability of Ella to be available, accessible via mobile for those guys that's in banking calls, but importantly for our colleagues working from home is paramount. And I think, will we ever change back from that? I don't know. I don't think so, if I'm honest with you. I think we'll continue to have a blended approach of how we support our customers, whether that's remotely or face-to-face in a branch-based or telephony-based environment.
Okay, I understand. And how do you think, how did Ella impact actually the lives of your colleagues, of your partners? How did it make a difference? Do you think that it made a difference, in the way your colleagues felt connected to each other during the pandemic?
I don't think, if I'm honest, David, it helped colleagues feel connected to other colleagues. Because they were connected with Ella, and if we class Ella as a colleague, then yes, but as a human colleague, probably not. No, but I think what she did do is she gave our colleagues the confidence that actually they would be able to have great conversations with customers, irrespective of where they were. They knew that actually at the tap of a button they would be able to find the information they needed. We've evolved Ella over the last 12 months, so it displays more content-rich information. So there's, we've got things like interactive demos, videos, etc., that our colleagues can use to really help understand the conversation from our customer, to be able to help with what they're seeing, what they're feeling, etc., to be able to help them. I guess for me, the simple answer is, if I look at the feedback from our colleagues, and then work our way back to feedback from our senior leaders, it's been tremendous over the last 12 months in terms of what she's done. And I think it's honest to say that actually the amount of changes that our colleagues have seen within this period, changes to processes, changes to the way in which we support our customers. We've had mortgage holidays, loan holidays, credit card deferrals, all that kind of different things, supporting customers in very challenging situations. The speed which we've been able to update Ella to provide that information real time has been paramount. And we've done that through things like push notifications. So if things change, the first thing you see when you log into Ella is you'll get to see things that have changed and that are working for our colleagues as well.
And you think the learning that you've done, developing and improving Ella, will it help you implement something similar with AI and machine learning to actually help customers?
Yeah, we already have a customer version of a digital assistant. So we have Cora, which is our customer-facing chatbot, which is doing some great work with our customers. The Ella one is very much the internal colleague one, supporting our colleagues. Processes are different, so we try and keep the two of them separate if we can, just to make sure we're surfacing the right information to the right colleague. And they do actually work off slightly different technology bases as well.
Okay. Okay. And in terms of features that Ella might be able to acquire in the future, I mean, the actual capabilities of the software itself, do you think that it might become like an even more like present feature, like in branches once the branches open again, or like become, when footfall increases? Where do you see that going?
I think Ella will be there to be used. And as I said, I think David, you said Ella was available before lockdown, before the pandemic, and was being used tremendously across all of our colleagues, whether that was branch contact centers, web chat functionalities, etc. So I don't think we'll see that bigger change in terms of how she's actually using our branches than what we saw before. I think the ability to surface information quickly will remain paramount for our colleagues to be able to use it. We know that our colleagues work in different ways now. If you walk into a branch, irrespective of what bank now, they look very different than what they did before in terms of layouts. It's more around collaboration spaces rather than perhaps interview rooms, etc., and traditional behind glass panels, etc. So I think having something that's accessible, that you can find the information you need as and when you need it, is vital for our colleagues.
Okay. Well, we're also having a couple of questions from the public. One of it we've partially already covered. So you think that Ella will not take over in terms of like customer facing role. So you think that this will not help you to develop a new and improved way to communicate with customers as well?
I think, as I said, Ella's purpose is to look after our colleagues and to support our colleagues to have that human interaction with our customers, which is still vitally important. What we do in the background is we work really closely as a team with the other parts of the bank that look after our customer-facing digital assistants, just to make sure that we're sharing, understanding, and using technologies the best we can collectively.
Okay. And from Khalid Karim, we have, is Ella built in-house or is the bespoke software built by a third-party developer?
It's part of it's built by a partnership that we have with a third-party developer. To be fair, we've started this journey with them from moving from that knowledge-based internet type search and find Q&A system to the chatbot functionality. So we've worked really closely with them to use their skill sets and their technology. The team that I look after, David, is we collectively come from a frontline branch or telephony based environment. So we're not a technical team as such. So we've kind of, everything we do walk in the shoes of our colleagues, because that's where we came from to a certain extent, to try and make sure we're doing the best thing we can for them.
Okay. And do you see AI becoming a more prominent feature in other projects in the future for NatWest?
Yeah, I think so. I think, if we look at, how can we start simplifying different things using technology that's available for us. I know within the Ella space, we're considering and looking at the potential for automation. So rather than Ella potentially telling somebody how to do something, what are the possibilities of Ella actually physically doing it for them? And so we're exploring that as potential opportunities as we move forward as well, to really simplify how we look after our customers and help our colleagues get things right.
Okay. Let me see if we have any more questions.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us today.
No worries.
Automation and chatbots. Sometimes people get a bit worried about the fact, or they get hung up on, we're taking away people's jobs. But for me, this is a very progressive thing, because we can now deploy people doing other things which are more value added, and the mundane stuff like answering frequently asked questions can get replaced. Did you get any resistance to this internally within the bank?
In terms of Ella, I think, Naeem, it's slightly different, because Ella is, as I said, designed to support colleagues. So she was never designed to replace colleagues. That's fact. So she is very much an internal colleague tool to help them have those great human conversations. Now, if we can help our colleagues have the simple conversations really quickly, really easily, what it does actually help us to do is invest more time and be more available for customers when they really need us. And to be able to invest those times in, and, I guess, to coin the phrase, to be brilliant when it matters.
Thank you for that.
I think we have one last question from Khalid again. Is there any similarities with Sophia, the humanoid robot, the robot citizen? So I mean, if you're like aware of the story, I mean, she was the first robot to actually receive citizenship from a country, I think the Emirates or Saudi Arabia.
I'm aware of Sophia, if I'm honest with you, the humanoid sort of thing, and I know we have. And we still look at, as an organisation, not perhaps in the space where I'm in, how we can potentially use that sort of technology, again, supporting at the outset colleagues' capabilities. But that's as far as that's gone at the moment for us.
So you don't think that in the near future we'll be seeing like android clerks in our branches?
Not in the near future, no. But it would be interesting to see what the world looks like in many years' time. But no, I think as a bank, there is definitely that place for a blend of digital technology and, importantly, humans.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one very last question from Neil, actually. How do you, in regards to Cora, so the AI that deals with customers directly, have you found resistance from customers that might be a bit old-fashioned and therefore they have issues with like kind of trust dealing with a machine rather than a human counterpart?
Not that I've seen, David and Neil. If I'm honest, I think, as an organisation, we still have a very blended approach on how we look after our customers. So, we still have contact centres, we still have our branch-based colleagues. So the human interaction for our customers that crave that is still very much available for them. When we start thinking around the chatbot functionality, people choose to interact in that way through various different things. And I think over the past 12 months, we've all probably changed how we interact with organizations and embrace different things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, carry on, sorry.
No, go ahead with your question, it's fine.
Well, I'm going to delete Neil's question that he's a NatWest customer for 35 years. Neil, my dad's been a NatWest customer for 50 years, he keeps telling me. There's a question there for Mus. How does the strategy for digital approach move away from bricks and mortar need for post-pandemic customer need? Interesting question.
I'm sure it's a great question, Naeem, but I didn't quite catch it.
Do you want to read it, David?
How does the strategy for digital approach move away from bricks and mortar need for post-pandemic customer need?
It's a great question, if I'm honest with you. I think, we still have a need for our branches. We still have a need for that environment to be able to support our customers as and when that's what they see appropriate. I think digital will complement ourselves as an organization when we build, we'll continue to build relationships with customers and really drive our purpose of supporting our customers and help them thrive. In terms of how we move away from bricks and mortar, to be fair, there's probably not a question for me to answer, if I'm honest.
Great. I think if we wrap that up there, I'd like to thank you, Matt, for your time.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Love working with NatWest. I do a lot of work on the Entrepreneur Hub, supporting the customers there, and we've also been customers for a long time. So thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Right, David, did you want to share something? Do you want to share a slide?
Yes.
And as David is getting that ready, what I'm going to say is we'll take a 5-minute break very quickly, and we'll start back in about 5 minutes, just after David does his share. Got it?
No, it's not going to allow me. Technical difficulties as usual.
Okay, no problem. We'll come back to that later, but let's just go for a 5-minute break. We will start back at 11:01, please. That's UK time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We can, we do.
Okay, so we'll get ready for our next session. Our next speaker is Ali Malik. Ali joins us from Pakistan, and Ali has been working on a number of CX projects, particularly around the retail and maybe the finance sector space, but I'll allow him to share that. And he's going to be talking to us about sustaining and emerging through service-centric cultures. So good job, I've got my teeth in this morning. Thanks, Ali. Over to you, sir.
Hi, Naeem. Thank you for having me. And I'm very happy to be on this amazing event, sharing my thoughts and listening some amazing perspectives from some of the CX professionals who inspire us every single day. So greetings to everyone from a very summer-centric Lahore, Pakistan. And let me share my presentation with all of you. So Naeem, please advise me when you'll be able to see this.
Yeah, presentation mode.
Great.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll be sharing and talking about sustaining and emerging through service-centric cultures. And I'll be sharing some quick glimpses about how this part of the world is dealing with COVID-19 and how trying to sustain and emerge through COVID challenges in context of delivering better services and experiences. A quick view about me. I consider myself a man on mission CX in Pakistan. A developing economy, which is like many other developing countries, has most of the focus on product and commodities rather than on service and customer experiences. And there it makes my space because I'm on a mission to create CX and customer service awareness and helping organizations to elevate customer service standards and experiences, building better experiences with a vision to make this a better serving nation. So my speech will be based on two main areas. Number one would be what proactive service actions taken by Pakistani government and authorities to minimize the potential destructive impact of COVID-19 and how they achieved global admirations on their result-oriented efforts. And number two would be a quick preview on service and experience actions taken by some agile organizations in Pakistan and different parts of Asia and how they connected with customers on an emotional level. So talking about Pakistan being the fifth most populous country in the world, having a population of over 200 plus million people with a weaker healthcare infrastructure, tough economic challenges, and many poor families living in crowded living conditions, Pakistan initially seemed to be in great danger from possible health and economic damages, which might be happening due to COVID-19. So, despite having consistent political leadership crises in last multiple decades, this time the challenge was handled by a visionary leader who is also a 1992 Cricket World Cup champion, Prime Minister Imran Khan. And I'm hopeful that most of my audience is a cricketing lover here and might see some of the cricketing games by Imran Khan sometimes. Uh, so having integrity as his core political value, his cabinet was more agile, data-driven, experimental, and ambitious. So in Q1 of 2020, where a lot of world leaders were not taking any action, there was not a single COVID case in Pakistan. Pakistani government started planning national action plan according to WHO guidelines and announced 1 month lockdown in the country to minimize the risk of exposure. Remember, after this 1 month in time lockdown, Pakistani fortunately never had to offer full lockdown till this moment. I will tell you how. Prime Minister of Pakistan created National Command and Operations Center by involving various stakeholders and started working to establish safety protocols. building COVID-19 quarantine facilities, and a specific and special empathetic focus on poorer families and how they can get relief in the times of uncertainty. And this is the moment where he and his team also started building trust with the public, and they used to come to daily media briefs and educating people of Pakistan about what measures he and his every member of the cabinet is taking on daily basis. So, like within 6 to 8 weeks of COVID inception, early 2020, Pakistan adopted the testing capacity of 30,000 tests per day, which was pretty good on those early days. And WHO and the Ministry of Health created the We Care program, which trained over 100,000 healthcare workers on safety practices. Pakistan's principal weapon has been smart lockdowns. The country did not expand it for a full lockdown, uh, but like a small lockdown where they used to place lockdowns in multiple places where they fear that the cases of COVID are emerging rapidly. Uh, on the government part, there was a lot of focus on testing, tracing, and quarantining. For every single positive patient, government traced about 30 contacts on an average of that patient, depending on the person's level of mobility, and then quarantine all of them. This sounds silly, but it was a very in-time action at those times, which saved a lot of potential risks and lives. The active strategy of the frequent small lockdown in areas where localized outbreak had occurred has proven to be a practical way of handling COVID-19 in Pakistan. At the same time, government of Pakistan, being empathetic to less privileged people, launched the emergency cash transfer scheme and delivering approximately $1.1 billion to 14.8 million families at the risk of extreme poverty. Even at micro level, countless institutions, businessmen, traders, privileged families donated hundreds and thousands of grocery bags to poorer families and daily wagers. Who were being affected badly by the COVID-19 crisis. So we saw an overwhelming unity and emotions of helping and serving everyone in these critical times. It was amazing demonstration of empathy and gratitude in those hard times. A developing country's government also offered free health insurance for every citizen in KPK province. And now it's moving towards the biggest province in terms of population, which is Punjab. Uh, so the curve of COVID infection was flattened since in peak in May and June 2020 until recently we see a small spike. And so far, Pakistan has done well in its fight against COVID-19 in a country with over 200 plus million people. Till date, roughly 600,000 cases have been recorded, with 92% patient being recovered and only 13,000 mortalities in a country of 200 plus million people. So these are still the statistics which are still sad for many of us, but much encouraging by analyzing how COVID impacted people lives in many other regions, including Pakistan. The World Health Organization, WHO, said Pakistan was among countries from whom the international community should learn how to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Multiple global leaders and print publications acknowledged Pakistan was a great case study globally on managing the challenge of COVID-19. So I like to share small, quick steps which the government taken in time to make it an exemplary situation. Number one, rapid response teams to track and trace patient and ensure home quarantine guidelines. Number two would be strict lockdowns in selected areas for a limited time where people were not allowed out of their homes except by essentials. And then volunteers, a lot of volunteers, hundreds and thousands of volunteers, ensuring the provision of food, medical, and critical supplies, such as oxygen cylinders in areas under lockdown. And number four was ensuring implementation of health guidelines, such as wearing masks and fining individuals and businesses who were violating the orders, actually. And sixth was smart lockdowns, like not shuttering down the whole country at all, but only shutting down shops, businesses, and restaurants in potential risk areas and where the few cases have been reported. So now life in Pakistan is getting largely back to the normal, through the battle is still not over. and every day is a new challenge for us, like any other country in the world. But this clearly established that this small success of combating COVID-19 is due to having a clear vision of service, servant leadership, having greater purpose, and having proactive actions to serve society. So this was a little bit about the country overall and how the government handled the COVID-19 crisis and managed it well. And now I would like to talk something about COVID impact in brands and customer experience economy. I would also request Naeem to ping me in time when I'll be finishing my time deadlines. So some companies in the region are acting graceful, showing empathy and compassion to their customers. Then some leaders and companies are not caring at all. And they are the only one who are obsessed with transactions and profit margins, ignoring the customer needs, wants, and preferences. So brands or business leaders are showing their true colors in COVID-19 crisis. Employees are observing what their employers are doing and how they are leading them in crisis. Customers are observing what their favorite brands are doing and how they are serving them. So these brands connecting with their customers emotionally in these critical times? Overall, as a customer, we saw a lot of goodness, empathy, and inspiration. The human inspiring experiences are all over across the region, and this pandemic globally inspired us all. Yes, we also witnessed opposites, and some brands gave fair reasons to customer to not buy or connect with them again. Let's talk about some service leadership brand stories in the region, like donation of mailboxes to less privileged people in COVID lockdown period. Million of meals campaign like by Pepsi Pakistan has so far distributed over 10 million meals as part of its ongoing COVID-19 disaster relief efforts. And then we saw a lot of leading institutions delivering thousands of grocery boxes to needful families in Pakistan. Then there are some companies helping and supporting frontline health workers, making special meals, delivering for health workers who risk their lives for COVID patients. I saw a very interesting McDonald's UAE example where in UAE, McDonald's track orders from hospital and healthcare professionals and then replied them with appreciation of their efforts and delivered them free meals. Uh, Leading electronics brands in Pakistan donated multiple batches of millions of protective materials to government of Pakistan. So corporate social responsibility was a key element, an element where brands were generous in charity and donations for less privileged people in Pakistan. We saw a lot of leading telecoms, banks, manufacturing companies donated billions of rupees to government in terms of COVID relief funds. To Pakistani government and private sector employees donated their larger portion of salaries to government relief funds. We witnessed multiple examples of CSR and financial contribution during lockdown, and that shows that organizations are genuinely taking care. Some leading beverage companies in Pakistan shifted their entire advertising budgets towards relief efforts. We saw some decent examples of employee retention and financial supports where fantastic brands were generous in taking care of their employees, which was not usual in pre-COVID days. So some heroic grocery chains gave special bonus to their frontliners, and some companies did not laid off a single employee, but even paid full salaries and given special incentives to the lower salary bracket employees. Some executive management of the companies voluntarily agreed to pay partially cut pays and to allow their lower income colleagues to be paid in full. That was a huge act of generosity by these people. And then we saw some decent level of employee engagements where right before COVID, work from home was unimaginable, especially in manufacturing and retail sectors. A lot of company fortunately started transforming their employee experiences, started investing in technologies which allow them to create meetings and reporting arrangements with an option of working from home. Brands in Pakistan acted very responsible in terms of compliance, such as promoting social distances in their retail premises, sanitizing people at entrances, promoting mask culture for staff and customers, safety communications within stores on digital channels. So people were observing which brands truly care for their safety and which brands only care for their sales transactions and store footfalls. Safety protocol communications and responsible implementations were made in organizations by brands. Restaurants, we see a lot of empathy for their customers where they used to check temperature for staff and customers, sanitize for whole premises and staff regularly. And then we saw them ensuring product and delivery system were totally aligned with safe, healthy, convenient, and in-time reach to their customers. Then we saw a very interesting trend, like restaurant moved to digital online ordering space. We're in turbulent times for restaurant industry, and e-commerce companies started creating employee opportunities like Foodpanda. They started creating opportunities in difficult times for more than 15,000 riders and around 10,000 restaurant owners whose business was badly affected due to COVID. We saw organizations help female entrepreneurs to get skilled at cooking and sell through Foodpanda. Like over 10,000 restaurants generate up to 40% additional revenues through this company in COVID restrictions. We saw a lot of interesting social media messages where brands started promoting about safety arrangements made for their customers, educational safety messages, diverting them to online orders rather than visiting brick and mortar, and practicing social distancing and wearing masks. Interestingly, banks where thousand people changed their decades-old habits of paying utility bills and branches and started shifting towards online and mobile banking. Pakistani banks completely waive off the financial charges on digital transactions to promote digital banking. And the use of internet and digital banking apps has risen sharply since COVID inception. So these are some of the fantastic stories, which was quite surprisingly for this part of the region of the world, because it was a bit unusual for many of us. In UAE, in a lot of countries like Emirates and Dubai airports, they improved their processes and customer outcomes like flight cancellation and quick refunds, COVID screening test at airports, sanitization in complete aircraft, new safety attires for staff, new communication protocols, etc., etc. So for good brands, empathy remain to be a core mindset in all of customer interaction, a must forefront CX strategy for every brand. So brands need to create a sense of empathetic relations that is inclusive, meaningful, purposeful to its customer. And glad we see a lot of these examples in Asia doing that. Like in Thailand, we saw companies creating factories to produce free masks and supplying to the hospitals. We saw mattress companies donating multiple mattresses to hospitals. We saw Grab, which was a taxi model system like Uber. They cut off 20% pay to help food merchants. AirAsia, a leading airline company in Asia, encouraged staff to deliver food. And then KFC Malaysia encouraged people to cook at homes rather than promoting message to visit their restaurants. And multiple examples where like Singapore Airlines crew help fill labor gaps at hospitals, and companies like Alibaba and leaders like Jack Ma donated huge medical supplies across Asian region. Uh, so brands, let me come to a small portion because I think I'm left with only 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So I'll try to summarize it. Brands and companies need to have a clear understanding of their customers' evolving needs, wants, and expectations in COVID times. So let me share a quick example of a Pakistani market leader of liquid and sanitization brand, where they put social media headlines that we join hands forces with Ministry of Health to help Pakistan fight COVID-19. And the real customer experience was their products were inaccessible at the shelves of the retail markets, products selling in black over 500% of official price. And there was a huge disconnect with the customers. So I must say that the result was where the entire market share of sanitizers has now been dominated by new entrants, but not with the pre-COVID market leaders. And then we saw some small examples where Small companies made inspiring actions. They mapped the customer journeys, like a small retail sales pharmaceutical company, Duago, observed insane shortages of sanitizers, and they worked with their pharmacist on a very small scale and launched sanitizers on low prices to eliminate the customer frustrations. So their business model was actually a sales model, but this is where they tried and genuinely help the customers in a very effective manner. So, how to have a clear understanding of customers' evolving needs, wants? I'll put some 9 points quickly. Where number 1 point is safe buying experiences. Companies need to have a clear understanding of safe buying experiences, and customers are not ready to compromise on safe and handy standards at their premises. So companies really need to create trust with the customers, and this is a must to do. Second, employee support training and engagement, where companies need to train and educate their employees, regularly directing them how to serve customers with new protocols and customer expectations, offering convenient, easy, and faster interactions to the customer, like Asian retail stores are adopting order and pick from stores as well as quick delivery formats in Asia. Use of technology with a clear purpose to serve customers in more efficient manner is a key. Product availability, as I shared a quick example with you, supply chain is very, very important and critical discipline in post-COVID age, and this is one of the important factors. Empathetic experiences, like in COVID times, customers do not expect more like enjoyable experiences, but more of empathetic experiences. Actively enabling service and support channel for customers to avoid their frustrations is a key. Brand communication is very, very important. Communicate more often with empathy to all consumers what your company is doing during period crisis makes the relationship alive. Personalized experiences and customer segmentation, not only demographically but psychographically as well, and then deciding how to give value added services to each of these segments and to help them achieving their goals. And last but not least is the service excellence. So service excellence has been never been important in being a key differentiator, uh, where a customer can feel delighted and feel happy as an outstanding service differentiator. So I'm coming to the end of my slides, and we would like to conclude that customer experience in these times, the best experience strategy in COVID times is the care. Care is the best strategy, and care, we need to embed care as a philosophy for our businesses, customers, employees, vendor and suppliers, for society, and for care for everyone around. Customer complaints are a gift, and especially Pakistani and Asian companies must need to start listening their customers, taking complaints seriously, and make specific actions to resolve them. CSR is important. So the reminder is that the brands need to assess their purpose, meaning, and position in a new COVID landscape as they are relevant to the customer needs, want, and expectation, and how their product and services can impact their customers and improve their lives. So they need to remind themselves the core purpose of their existence, and which is to serve their customers and improve their lives through their products and solutions and services. So it reminds me a very relevant quote by Darwin, who's an economist, who says, "It's not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to the change." COVID-19 is an opportunity for every business to prove to their audience that they are either business leaders or if otherwise. Time to act is now. Interesting times ahead. So in the end, in the last slide, I will share a quote by one of the most inspiring and guiding CEO on the planet, who inspires me a lot, Mr. Jagma. And he says that never give up. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be worse. But the day after tomorrow will be a sunshine for us. So this makes me end my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening our regional perspective, and I'm very happy to be in this conference and listening some amazing speakers ahead. Thank you, Naeem, and thank you everyone.
Thanks, Ali. Very informative, and I wrote down quite a few things there. So if I can just pick off a couple of questions with you first. The first one, obviously Pakistan is a country where maybe working from home wasn't so easy for people to take on. So you shared a bit of information there saying that that transition was hard. Have you seen that now that we've been through a year of COVID, that you think that we have enough infrastructure in place for people to consistently work from home going forward?
Well, Naeem, great question. I must not say that it's enough infrastructure, but I must say that there was a lack of trust between traditional employers and the employees in developing countries from a long time. And COVID-19, in fact, is an opportunity where the employees and employees both started building trust between each other. And this is the time where they started investing in the technologies infrastructure. And this is where it's a new norm, and people are adopting this new norm happily and moving forward.
Okay, great, thank you. And I've written down the word trust there, very important. I like what you said there. And then the second thing I wanted to pick up on is that you saw a lot of evolution in the last year. You know, you gave the example of Food Panda, which was an opportunity for maybe small entrepreneurs to continue to trade. You know, they didn't have to completely shut down. You gave a bigger example of digital payments and banking. Again, do you see that evolution? Maybe last year, you know, the curve went spiked up. Do you see it straightening out, or do you see it to be a new trend and a new maybe sector developing where people are developing technology to support entrepreneurship?
Well, I must say digitization is here to remain constant. We see over 203% rise in the statistics of like using digital banking. If you might be visiting Pakistan, you may see a lot of people queue just standing in the hot temperatures, standing just to pay the utility bills. So we see a rapid shift of people moving towards paying their utility bills through digital and online banking. We see a lot of startups coming on and offering digital services and solutions like Food Panda. They are enjoying some tremendous growth and profits from last 1 year, and still a lot of companies, digital companies, are on rise constantly. So I see digital innovations and digital solutions and services are definitely here to rise, because COVID-19 is here to stay for some time, and people, therefore, a lot of companies and people are adopting best practices, keeping that in mind.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, again, I love the point you made about those brands are being successful who are responsible. Again, you know, considering all we know about countries like Pakistan, do you think that some of these brands have now taken that responsibility? You know, you talked about the utilities. I know from personal experience how paying your utility bill can be a problem in a place like Pakistan, but have you seen the brands really step up? Do you think now they are being held to account? And of course, this is the best thing for other customers, would you say?
Well, I think the things have rapidly shifted towards the positive curve, but still there are a lot of room for improvements. As I shared with you, like companies need to work a lot on their supply chain logistics, like the challenges of inaccessible products, like still having the problems with late deliveries. Like still a lot of retail brands are coping up with the mechanism of delivering within 24 hours or delivering within in-time brand promises. So there are a lot of opportunities where brands can improve. And this is what my point is. Like, we saw a country leader where he came in and he changed the traditional landscape, and he given a lot of success stories, and he become inspiration and admiration for a lot of developing countries. So it's time for the brands and the customers and the employers and the employees to make their individual contributions to the society and play their parts, and to have a vision on how to create better lives for the people around them.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Ali, for sharing today. It's been very useful, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot of follow-up questions for that. So yeah, thank you for taking part today, Ali.
It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm super excited to hear more today. Thank you, Naeem.
Thanks, Ali. Okay, so let's move on to our next speaker who will be joining us in a second. Again, we're going to have a 2-minute transition over, so hopefully the sound works on this one.
Hi, Naeem. Can you hear me? I don't hear you. I don't hear you. I hear music in the background.
We care, we do.
Over to you, Anne.
Hello. Can you see me? No?
Yes.
Oh, you can? Okay, brilliant. Okay, right. So I'm Anne Sheedy, customer experience consultant operating from Cambridge, UK. And I have great pleasure to be the host for this session, but also to introduce our speaker, Gregorio Uglioni. Gregorio is an expert in business and digital transformation. He's also the host of the CX Goalkeeper and very active on LinkedIn. If you haven't seen the CX Goalkeeper, I recommend you check it out. He's now an author in CX3, and his chapter on pivot customer service into a value generating engine picks up his combined passion for customer experience and also creating innovative solutions that generate value for both and the company, treating us to some of his insights today. So what I'd like to do is start with a poll. And if, there it is for you already. So is your company contact center seen as a cost center, a value center, or neither? What the hell are those? Or we haven't thought about it. Okay, so now what I'm going to ask you to do, hand over to Gregorio. What I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A for me, and I can be sort of absorbing those as we go and sort of, collecting things together. So without further ado, over to Gregorio. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for the great introduction. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes.
Perfect. Then let's start with the presentation. And it was nice to hear what was discussed this morning, because based on that, we can also build up the discussion and take some points and some questions that were asked during the day. Ali spoke earlier, 10 minutes ago, about service excellence, and this is something that I would like to point out now. Thank you very much, Ali, for introducing my speech. That was the best way to do that. And then I also saw some question, Niall stating, oh, I want to speak with a human, I don't want to speak with a machine. And perhaps I am trying to show you how this is possible. let's start with 4 examples, because we are all customer at the end, and we have 4 customers in 4 different situations. The situation number 1 is Alice. She wants to buy shoes to go for a run, to go out. Now in Zurich is sunny. I would also like to go out for a run later. And she bought these shoes, and the delivery promise was we deliver in 1 week. After 1 week, she was expecting to get the shoes, but the shoes were not here. The second example, Bob, he has a credit card. He went to buy something shopping, and then he typed 3 times the wrong PIN code, personal PIN code, and basically the card was blocked. And now something needs to happen. The third example that I want to share is about Charles. Charles is getting a push notification, a request from the bank to confirm his home address. And he's asking, what the hell, why I need to confirm my address? You have my address, because are you asking me about my address? And the fourth example that I would like to share, it's about Deborah. Deborah has a subscription. She's always getting paper at home about the newspaper, and she's not reading the newspaper. And therefore she would like to cancel this newspaper. What do Alice, Bob, Charles, and Deborah in common? They are going to contact the company. They need to do something. They need to act or to react to something that happens. And how they want to be treated in a fast, easy, and convenient way. They want to solve their problems, their questions, their requests, as I stated. And additionally, we are all human beings, and therefore we would like also to be treated as human beings with a human touch. Based on these 4 examples, speaking about some figures, there are people that really love figures, therefore I wanted also to have some figures in my presentation. 42% of customers stopped or decreased the spend at a company after only one, and I repeat, after only one bad experience. The second figure that I would like to share with you is 62% of the customers are willing more to pay for a good or outstanding customer service. And we can start a discussion. I'm not seeing the chart. It's not 42, it's 45, it's 50. These are only 2 sources that I found, and I built on that. But at the end, these are really big numbers. We are not speaking about 1% or 2% of the people. I want to introduce also the idea that customer service is the loyalty driver, because it's for quite a lot of companies, it's the last opportunity to have a direct contact to the customer. It's not marketing that has a direct contact to the customer. It's not the IT that has a direct contact to the customer. It's customer service. And customer service drives loyalty. I'm not speaking about having happy customer, but I'm really speaking about improving acquisition, improving retention, improving share of wallet, and reducing cost. And this is possible if we apply customer experience science. I saw that Ian Golding is also in this presentation. Therefore, I think he liked this, the sentence that customer experience is a science came from his presentation. However, I think this is really the key. And now we all agree that this is important, but we have a challenge, and there are different expectations. What are the expectations of the shareholders? What are the expectations of the customers? Expectation of the customer were already mentioned: fast, easy, convenient, and you can add all the adjectives that you would like, but these are the way that our customer wants to be treated with the human touch. On the other side, there are shareholder expectations, and most of the company, I'm not speaking about all the companies, they are really looking at the next quarter. I can hit the numbers. I can achieve the numbers that I want to achieve, I need to achieve. And in the contact center, there is only one way. If the contact center is not creating value added, the only way is to reduce the costs. And how can you reduce the cost in the contact center? There is only one way: having less people in the contact center. And this is really a big issue, because on the short term, you can then achieve your targets, but on the long term, you will have some issues, because if people leave, then you have less people to handle the same number of contact, and therefore you create stress you create issues, and then customers are not willing to wait in the line for 30, 40, 50 minutes, and therefore they are starting recalling, and you have a big quality issues. Now I say what it's also about the chapter that I wrote in Customer Experience 3. There are opportunities, there are strategies, there are ways how to make that possible, to transform the contact center operations into a value generating customer focus engine. And we have some enablers, and nowadays I think this is for everybody in this conference. All of you are CX experts. You know, we have enough data to understand what customers want, what are the customer needs, how do they want to be treated, how can we personalize experiences. We have technology, and often, and I also listen to the discussion about the chat, it's always speaking about technology that we use towards our customer. We use technology and our customer can use that. But think also about technology that we can use in the company to support and enable our employees, our contact center representatives that are in contact with the customer, they speak with the customer. I'm also working in a company with a big contact center, and I see really people that are more focused on trying to find the right button to click, or try to find how do I deal with this process, instead of having time to speak with the customer, empathize with the customer, and create value for the customer. And technology nowadays is enough mature to expose that to the customer and to expose that to the employees. And at the end, and I think this is always the key from my point of view, is human beings. The contact center representative working for our own companies, these are people that we hired. Therefore, we need to enable them, empower them to create special experience, amazing experience for the customer, and giving them the opportunity to really make the difference, because this is the key. With technology, you can achieve quite a lot, but you cannot achieve everything, and human beings are still there to make the difference. If we think about these three enablers, I want to reintroduce, and you see also the quote, this is not my matrix, it's the value irritant matrix that was developed by Price and Jaff. This is the book where I took it. And you see the value irritant matrix. And this introduced really an interesting concept. A dialogue, an interaction start always from the customer or from the company. And then let's put this on a matrix. It's a simple matrix, 2 for 2. And let's start thinking about, if I create is for the customer, an interaction, a dialogue, is irritating or create a value? And the same for the company. Does an interaction create value or is irritating? And then we come to the 4 options. If you remember back to the 4 options or the 4 customer that I explained at the beginning, the experience that they had, let's start with a leverage. It means we create value for the customer and we create value for the company. Think about Deborah example. Deborah was the lady that wanted to cancel her subscriptions. And therefore, we want to create value for Deborah, and we want to create value for the company. Therefore, let's align the objectives. If we can have, and we want to have, this interaction, we want to give them to human beings in order to create amazing opportunities, amazing interaction. Let's give time to the contact center representative to speak with Deborah, to find and to understand why she's canceling her subscriptions. And then align the objectives, try to create value, understand why she wants to cancel. And then in the discussion, perhaps the employee find out that Deborah has no time to read the newspaper, a physical newspaper, but she's also doing quite a lot of sport and she wanted to listen to the podcast. And therefore, why not offering to Deborah the podcast and access to the podcast? And then you create value for the company because you keep the customer, and you create value for Deborah because she's still a customer of yours. Let's go to the second example. B, simplify. This is in the case that is irritating for the customer and create value for the company. And this is the example that I shared at the beginning about Charles getting this nasty message, could you please confirm your home address? And there it's, first of all, let's be clear, let's be open. The company is asking about the confirmation of the address due to, for example, rules and regulation, due to compliance reasons. And then let's explain to Charles that we are doing that, or the company is doing that based on this fact. And then he will understand. If we are then working on this level, then think about the preferences of Charles, and we have enough information. Let's push him a notification and ask him, could you please confirm that this is your address? Everything already pre-filled. And Charles has enough time to confirm the address within the defined timeline. And then you can really create value for the company, being compliant with all the rules and regulation, and you are not really irritating Charles. The next example, it's about eliminate, speaking about Alice. If we think back to Alice, what was her case? She was waiting for the shoes. And there it's irritating for the customer because she didn't got the shoes, and it's irritating for the company because the company had a brand promise or delivery promise within 1 week, and this was not possible. And therefore, it's extremely important to have stable process and to set the right expectation to the customer. If you are not able to deliver within 1 week, let's say we deliver within 2 weeks. And please, this is my personal view, and I know that it's we are in a big issue with this COVID situation, but still using after 1 year the COVID excuse based on due to COVID, we are delayed in the delivery. This is not, from a customer point of view, not acceptable anymore. And therefore, explain and set the right expectation to the customer in order not to irritate the customer and not having irritating processes for the company that needs to be performed. Because if you have one agent on this call, then you cannot have the agent perhaps on the leverage side where you can really create value added. Let's come to the last example. Automate, it's the case where we create value for the customer, and it's a bit irritating for the company. Why I'm saying only a bit irritating? Because this is the case of Bob. Bob typed 3 times the wrong PIN code, is not able to use the card anymore. And for sure, the company wants to enable the card again so that Bob can pay. But for this process, you need to identify the customer, authentify the customer, send him a new PIN code, and therefore these are the processes that you can automate, offer in a self-service. There are already credit card companies that are showing the PIN code in the app. If this is not possible, again, find a way to enable, to empower the customer to perform this service. And for example, in the case of Bob, Bob can ask for a new PIN code through WhatsApp to the credit card company, and the credit card company is going to send him this information. This is the key from the value matrix. We have quite a lot of experts in this round, and therefore it's nothing new, but I want to revamp this discussion. And exactly based on the fact that we are in a big crisis, we need really to create efficiency, and we want to still give to our customer an amazing experiences. Then let's use these enablers, these opportunities, in order to create the service that we want to provide to our customer, and also that the customer can really receive. Before I'm starting, I quickly go back to the poll. I see that the operation is still seen as a cost center. Some people already see that as a value center. It's great. And some people are stating that they never thought about it. Then please, let's think about it. And to conclude, to come to a summary, before I come to the summary, extremely important is the last topic that I want to mention, and it's about being proactive. Let's think about the 4 examples that I shared with you, Alice, Bob, Deborah, and Charles. In the case of Bob, the card was blocked. The card was blocked by the company, the credit card issuer. Why the credit card issuer, the company offering this card, was not proactive and telling to Bob, your card is blocked. If you perform these steps, you will unlock the card and you can use it again. This is one example of being proactive. The second one is also Alice. Let's think about Alice again. The shoes are not common. The company knows that that it's not possible to deliver within 1 week. Why not changing the customer expectation and explaining to the customer, in this phase we are not able to send you the shoes within 1 week, but we need more time. Please give us some time. And if we treat people like human and we are proactive as a company, they will understand. Summarizing, because I know that Anne will tell me that I still have only 2 minutes. Let's summarize that. And as a good Swiss citizen, extremely precise on the timing. Squeezing the lemon, meaning decreasing the number of employees in a contact center, is not the solution. It's a short-term solution, but it's not the solution. And I think I mentioned quite a lot why it shouldn't be. Data, technology, and human touch are really great enablers, are the mean to offer these experiences. Game changer is think about reuse this value irritant matrix. What is create value for me and for or what is irritating for me as a company? What creates irritation or value for our customer? And then you can think about your processes in the customer journey. You have all the touch points. You know which processes need to be performed. Use this value irritating matrix. The last point that I mentioned, being proactive, I think this is a key, and I know quite a lot of companies are already doing it well, but there are still a lot of companies that are not leveraging this opportunity of being proactive. And high quality service create value and reduce cost. If in the boardrooms is not yet understood, then it's my task, it's our task as customer experience expert to bring this information and to explain that. And I would like to close with my presentation. It was really a big pleasure of being here, open for the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay. Gregorio, that was amazing. Thank you so much. My sort of key things that I took from that was that the first thing was your examples really brought home the fact that the cost center is one of the most direct one-to-one places of connection to the customer, and what a wonderful opportunity it is. And I think it is true that more often than not, the contact center is seen as a cost center, where the priority is on reducing costs. But actually you flip that on its head, and it's, the contact center is key for generating value both for the customer and the company. And that all the ingredients now are there, the resources in terms of data, technology, and the human beings, everything that you need to be able to sort of leverage and pivot your business from being, or pivot that bit from a cost center to a value generating center are there. So it was wonderful. Thank you. Now I have got some questions, and there's a brilliant question from Gustavo, which I noticed that template that you've used, the value irritant model, and I've heard it called the VIM model on one of your podcasts. But he says the framework looks amazing, and he sees the sources from 2009. Why do you think so few people know of it or apply it?
This is a great question. Thank you, Gustavo, for asking that. And only to be correct, and it was in a podcast I was with Christopher Brooks. It was not in my podcast, but we spoke about the value irritant matrix. Basically, there are several views on that, and I would like to share only one, and it's my personal view. Yes, it's an old book. It's from 2008, but at the end now we have new enablers, new opportunities, like all the data that we have, all this technology, and the technology nowadays is different than 20 years ago, and also the human being, what opportunities have humans, even more in this COVID phase. And therefore, I would really like, and I think we should revamp that. I am a big fan of this book, of this value-oriented matrix, and also speaking in the region, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, because here I'm active. Not a lot of people knows about that, and perhaps because it's contact center, it's not the focus of a company. I still see that quite a lot of companies are product driven. These are our products, and we focus on the products, and are not experience driven. And if we would also try to pivot that, then perhaps we would see that at the end, if a customer has an issue, it lands always into the contact center. And therefore, I think this is a big opportunity also with our book, Customer Experience 3, to relaunch the discussion and to put the emphasis on these topics.
Yes, yeah, very good. And I've got a question here from Khalid, which is, could you share a business case example where people measure the value of the cost versus the benefit?
Sure. There are quite a lot of examples. I allow myself to make two different examples. One example is if we think about the matrix, the automate piece. If I can full automate use cases, like I need a new PIN, then you would reduce the number of interactions as a company as with the customer, and therefore it's on the efficient side. On the other side, if you think about the leverage, where you want to have direct contact with the customers, then it's not anymore about average handling time, speed of answer, and so on. Because if you really think about that, and you can pivot this idea that the employee can create value, I think for the most company, it's cheaper to keep a customer than to find a new customer. If you think about cancellation, I would never automate the process of canceling a subscription or something like that, because I want to have the contact with the customer and I want to keep him as a customer. I know not all the customers have a value, and some customers are in the profit are negative, but at the end you can also steer which customer can automatically cancel the subscription or cancel the contract with the company, and the others. And there you have already one example. The other example is cross-sell, upsell. If you start a discussion, I discuss with one customer, and I see that now he changed a bit behavior and is traveling more. Therefore, perhaps I can offer him something on this topic, about this topic, and offering him. And then, if I am allowed to, from a regulation point of view, you can type also this in the CRM. Perhaps he was speaking about getting a child, and then you have the information, and you can perhaps use that and offer him an insurance, or coming back to him and create this contact, this relationship with the customer, where we spoke earlier about then improving acquisition, because if a customer is happy about you, then you spread the word of mouth, you get new customers, you can you improve the retention and the share of wallet. If you tell to the customer, you can use this feature from my product, but please take care that we are offering also this and that. Why not doing that? And therefore, I see quite a lot of these opportunities. There, one additional hint or suggestion is, let's calculate the business case from another department, because then you have a confirmation from outside of your department, the contact center, that you are really creating the value, and this is working.
Okay, so in our last 30 seconds, I'm going to ask the last question that I've got here. And this is somebody sharing their disbelief that they still can't believe that contact center is seen as a cost center. What about getting rid of it altogether and replace it with something else?
I hoped it was a bit a joke, because at the end I really like technology, but contact center, this human contact will stay, and it will stay for a long time. And therefore, I would not get rid of the contact center, but I would really apply the value return matrix, reduce the number of interactions, but selecting the interaction that create value for the customer and for the company.
Okay.
It was a big pleasure. Thank you very much.
Gregorio, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Great to hear from you, Greg. Did we share the results of the survey, Anne?
Yes, I did.
Was that surprising for you, Greg, to see the results of the survey, or is that what you always see?
No, it's often like that. Quite a lot of companies started thinking about that, but there are still roughly 60% of the people that think about customer service or as a cost center, or they were not thinking about it because they are busy with other topics. And it's clear all the products and all the other topics are also relevant.
I can't ask questions. Being host, it won't let me ask a question, so my questions will come verbally. So CX Goalkeeper, tell me a little bit about that.
That was an idea that I had after 1 month after COVID started. I gained 1.5 hours because I don't need to commute anymore, working from home. And then was the question, what I'm doing in this 1.5 hours, and also in the evening, do I want to sit in front of the television and watch television, or do I want to create something for me that I can also share with the others? And then I came up with the idea of CX Goalkeeper. It's linking my 2 passions. One is customer experience. The second one, it's soccer. And therefore I said, let's start, let's do that. And I like it very much. At the moment, it's a podcast and great discussion. And I like them very much because I learn a lot, and we sharing this information, this podcast also other people can enjoy.
Who's your team then?
I'm not sharing that because perhaps somebody would be then unhappy, and therefore people who knows me knows for which team I am fan, and we could then think about soccer as one of the best example of customer experience, with the teams trying to win, achieving. But this is another discussion, another conference.
Thank you both. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Greg. See you later. And Greg didn't mention, but obviously he's now a best-selling author because he's part of the CX3 book, which is officially released today as a podcast. Greg, how was that experience for you?
It was an outstanding experience. It was really great. 28 people writing the book, and 2 great let's say coordinators, authors, and so on. Naeem, you did a great job. Andrew did a great job. It was really amazing being part of such a great group. Extremely quick putting together an amazing book, and I like it really very much. And I hope that you buy the book, you enjoy the book. And if you have questions, come back to us, because we like difference of thoughts. If you have any ideas that you want to share, more than happy to have a discussion with you. You find me on LinkedIn, as Anne said.
Thank you, Greg. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that was Greg. And Greg really enjoyed that session. I think something really practical there that we seem to miss sometimes. And sometimes it's the practical stuff, the really simple stuff, which is the most powerful. Our next session is going to start at 12:15, so we're a little bit ahead of time, partly because I missed the breakout. There was a break supposed to be at 11:30 and I missed the break, so that's my fault. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go on a break now, and we'll join back at 12:15. We'll start this session at 12:15, so if you come back in about 10 minutes, we'll start that. And that next session is going to be a panel discussion hosted by Ian.
So when everyone sees my ugly face, Naeem, they know it is almost time to start.
Ian's lockdown haircut this time isn't that bad. I remember his haircut last time.
Trust me, you do not know just how much gel is on my head right now.
You know what? I'm 47 this year. I remember a time when I used gel.
I know we all have our crosses to bear with all of this. So, but anyway, so yeah, see you in 10 minutes, everyone.
See you in 10 minutes, everyone. Thank you.